A few weeks ago I featured a smart lock by Wheelock, and as good as that was, there were some things that were lacking. And I heard your comments that it was ugly and it should have a failsafe, and well, some of your points I agreed with, especially the need for an analog failsafe. I think I even mentioned that in the episode. Which is why today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Switchbot Lock Pro, only the second smart lock that I've reviewed so far, but is now my new favourite. But this is just a box. It's over there, so I'll put that over there. Now for starters, in terms of compatibility, the Switchbot Lock Pro will fit a much wider variety of locking mechanisms and cylinders, because rather than replacing the cylinder, the way this lock works is essentially by providing a robot that can turn your key in the lock. It's sort of like the original Switchbot in the way that it replaces your fingers with a little robot finger, except this replaces two fingers and a twisting motion, rather than a finger and a pressing motion. Now on the inside of the device is a sort of multi-adaptable grabbing slot which will fit almost every style of key. And to get it to work, all you do is mount the correct plate to your door and then clip the device to the plate with the key in the door underneath it. And that's it. You're done. There's no replacing cylinders, no messing about with the internals of the door. It's all done. I'll add a little asterisk onto this though, because there is a caveat and I'll come back to that shortly. But the amount of locks that this will fit is crazy, and there is a huge list on their website of compatibility and it's quite long. And that's a huge benefit of this style of device acting as a retrofit rather than a replacement. If you're unsure if it will fit your lock, there is a compatibility checker on the website that you can use, but the amount this will fit and work with is truly quite surprising. That said, despite its exemplary compatibility, you may find yourself slightly stumped due to its form factor. It's quite a large device, so if your keyholes are quite close to the edge of the door, there's a small chance that the depth of this might cause an issue when trying to open the door if the distance of the keyhole is less than 4 centimeters from the edge and sits on the side that opens outwards. If it is compatible and you've managed to get it installed, the first thing of note, and one of the main reasons that I love this lock already, is that it provides an analog failsafe, which the Wheelock didn't have. Most modern cylinder locks will allow you to have a key in the rear set of the cylinder whilst having another key in the front end of the cylinder as a safety mechanism to make sure that even if the key is in the door in the back, it can still be unlocked by a key from the front. This means that if you have the Switchbot lock on the inside of your door, if the batteries ran out for whatever reason and you weren't able to remotely unlock it, you can take your normal key, pop it in the door and unlock it. This, for me, makes the idea of using a smart lock much more appealing and acceptable. Now there's a side shoot here. If your cylinder doesn't support a key from both sides, it might be worth looking at replacing it for one with the emergency function, which I actually had to do with mine. Annoyingly, not a lot of locks online actually list this function. It's sort of a lucky dip as to whether or not it has it. So to save some confusion, I'll link below to the cylinder that I bought to replace my existing one. But in terms of changing the cylinder, if you had to actually do it, all you have to do is remove the bolt that holds the existing cylinder in place from the ridge on the outside of the door, slide out the cylinder and slide in the new one, securing it with the bolt again. It could not be simpler. Honestly, I was kind of worried, but it is dead easy. Now, just to make sure that you buy the right size cylinder, in my case, I was using a 45-55 cylinder because the central locking point is 45mm from one side and 55mm from the other. Now, there are some downsides to the way this retrofits and relies on that 3M sticky pad and the friction of the grub screws to hold it in place. From my experience so far, it hasn't come off once, but there is a slight concern that it might, given that there's nothing locking or bolting it in place other than the stickiness and friction. With that said, going back to my previous point, as long as you're using a cylinder that supports unlocking when a key is in the door, you've got nothing to worry about. Even if the Switchbot Lock Pro somehow fell off the back, you'd still be able to open it from the outside using your key with the analog method. So I guess it doesn't really matter from a safety perspective, more just of a perspective of maintenance. But if you have to regularly re-stick it, it could get annoying. But like I said, so far, so good. Only time will tell. Now, I think for everyone's peace of mind, you should be changing your cylinder for one with the emergency function if you're using this lock. But once you've faffed around and got it all set up, once it's on, what it allows you to do is a hell of a lot now with your brand new smart locking door. For starters, if you wanted, you can use the included sensor to read when the door is closed so that it auto locks for you. This is a really handy feature for security conscious people who want to make sure the door is locked either when you're in or outside of the house. It just means that every time the door gets shut, the lock will then activate. What's nice is that this is completely optional, and there's a setting to turn this off and remove the actual sensor in the app. Now, if you're on the outside, there's a number of different ways that you can unlock the door aside from the boring old key. The first is through the app, essentially giving you a great big button that can be pressed to lock or unlock the door remotely. Now, if you don't have a Switchbot hub, then you're stuck with Bluetooth connection only, meaning that you can only unlock or lock it from your local area. Whereas if you have the Hub Mini, this gives you the ability to connect it to your internet for remote lock control anywhere in the world. But it also allows you to expose the lock to other smart home systems such as Alexa or HomeKit and Home Assistant through Matter. Because it does this, it means that you can do things like set up the lock to unlock with your Apple Watch, which feels particularly futuristic. Now, it wouldn't be Switchbot without some extremely clever feature to lock and unlock, and in this instance, that comes in the form of the Switchbot keypad. Now, in many competing options, keypads usually have to be hardwired to the other side of the door for them to work. Most of them are connected to the latch inside. However, because the latch is connected to the interior device, the keypad can be fully wireless and stick anywhere on the outside as long as it can still connect to the lock. And in case you're wondering, no, I have not completely lost my mind. Well, I have, but not in this instance. I know it's supposed to be mounted on the outside of the door. I've just chosen to bring it inside to show you how interacting with the keypad changes the status of the lock. So, now you know I'm not mad. Once you've set it up and paired it to the Lock Pro within the app, you can do a number of different things now from the external with this keypad to unlock it. For starters, you can set it up to work with a code. Punching that in will unlock the door. With the codes, you can actually issue ones that expire and emergency codes too, which are handy for situations when you're perhaps renting out your property as an Airbnb, for example, or just want to grant temporary access. Alternatively, there's a built-in NFC reader which you can pair up to Switchbot's NFC cards, which act as keys. And lastly, perhaps the most importantly, it's got a fingerprint scanner at the bottom for super easy access. Now, in terms of the speed in which it registers, it's actually extremely quick. On paper, this is supposed to register and begin unlocking in just 0.3 seconds with an accuracy rate of 98%. So naturally, I had to test that claim. And sure enough, it registers almost faster than the action of pressing a button on a timer to start the timer, which is top stuff. The actual lock, however, takes a bit of time to twist all the way to its unlocked state. And the keypad has an indicator and beep when the door has been fully unlocked to stop you from trying to wrench the door open before it's unlocked. Now, I timed this, and it takes the lock 6.18 seconds to go from fully locked to fully unlocked, which is pretty slow. It's one of those things that you do and you're kind of just waiting for it to finish. But you are able to calibrate this a little bit better and decrease some of the movement range and adjust it slightly to decrease the time. But that time is from the key in my door at the maximum closed position to the maximum open position. Now, in respect to the accuracy of the fingerprint scanner, at first I thought that the Switchbot's claim of 98% accuracy was a little optimistic. I was finding that it was almost 50-50 whether or not it got it right. And unless I held my thumb in the perfect central position, it just wouldn't accept it. This was when I discovered that it was my fault. And if you go into the fingerprint settings, you can actually choose to enhance any fingerprints recorded and do a second pass over on the scanner to get a higher resolution scan of your prints. This immediately made a massive difference. And since that point, I don't think it's got it incorrect even once, actually. Interestingly, I found out by complete accident, and I actually discovered another little feature as well by accident, and that's that the mounting plate that it slides onto has a little magnet, and if you remove the keypad from the mounting plate, it will actually sound an alarm and not stop until you put your passcode in, which is a nice anti-theft touch. But overall, this keypad is a fantastic little device that makes it a really seamless experience for people using the door, both regular and non-regular users with that flexibility of unlocking capabilities. So that's opening from the outside, but there's actually two other ways you can open it if you're situated on the inside. You've largely got the same methods of control, such as the kind of wireless remote unlocking, but you also have the ability to manually twist a large dial, or, and perhaps one of my favourite features and innovations from this lock, you can just bump the dial. This is so beneficial, and in ways that you might not have thought of. For starters, it means I've got a hand-free exit. If my hands are full of bottles of whiskey, I can bump it with my elbow or knees and not drop all of the whiskey bottles to unlock the door. But I think it's also excellent from an accessibility standpoint too. Perhaps you have some affliction that affects your hand movement. It makes it easier to unlock the door or lock the door without the need of your fine motor skills. You just bump it. It's just a little addition that might seem innocuous to most, but I think has some incredibly positive implications. And the thing is, there's a few other additions as well that might seem innocuous, but I think are fantastic examples of Switchbot's ingenuity to solve problems that other brands just don't bother with. For example, the power situation. With the Lock Pro, you can power it through 4 1.5 volt AA batteries, which you can mount into a caddy and then slide into the compartment hidden beneath a magnetic panel. Now on paper, it should give you about 9 months of continuous use before you have to change those batteries. And obviously, I can't test that because I want to get this review out whilst it's still a new product. But on paper stat alone, that's not too shabby. But what's even better is the Switchbot Lock Pro rechargeable battery you can buy as an extra. This is a genius piece of kit that actually comes in two pieces, an A and a B. And what this allows you to do is leave one half in, powering the lock whilst the other half charges, which means you'll never have an unpowered lock. It's always going to have power because you leave part of the battery in whilst recharging. The sections of the battery are charged by USB-C too, so essentially, although these will run out eventually if you just left them in, as long as you charge each one at a time, when you get the low battery warning in the app, you'll never not have power for your smart lock. This is just a really clever solution to keeping your device powered at all times, even when having to remove the battery for charging. I do think a lot more devices could benefit from a split battery like this, especially things like security cameras that are utterly useless once you take the battery out to charge. And that seems like a massive oversight for a device that is supposed to secure your property. So I just think that this is such a fantastic innovation from Switchbot, and if they made a bunch of outdoor cameras, I want to see the same thing in them. But all of these innovations come at a price. Thankfully, however, there are a few variants of the Switchbot Lock Pro with different accessories, so there should be something for everyone. On its own, without any additional accessory, the Lock Pro comes to £139, which actually is super reasonable, especially given the fact that whilst I was writing this review, there was a discount code that took £20 off the price, bringing it to just £119. I don't know if that offer will still be active at the time you're watching this review, so drop down to the description and check out the link to find out. But I think for £119, that's a steal. It's a lot cheaper than the Wheelock we reviewed the other week, and in many ways much better. That said, the price doesn't include any kind of entry mechanism on the outside, so no keypad. That would be just for the internal lock, which you would need to use your phone to unlock over Bluetooth. To add the keypad, you'll need to look at buying that too. And actually, there's two versions of this, one without the fingerprint scanner and one with. The one with, I would probably personally recommend, given the fact that it's got ease of use. And it comes out at £99. But if you wanted to save a penny or two, then the one without the fingerprint scanner is £49. And then there's the battery pack, which actually isn't listed on their website at the moment, so I'm not 100% certain how much that will be. I guess you could use the caddy if you wanted to for the AA batteries, but if you wanted the best experience, then definitely that rechargeable battery is where you'd want to go. And then there's also the hub if you wanted the wireless connectivity when you're not at home, which will set you back another 30, 40, 50, I don't even know, how much is the hub? £132. Oh, that's a 4-pack. Silly me. Oh, £35, so add that onto it as well. All in, you're probably looking at £200 plus easily if you wanted all of the bells and whistles. They do offer bundles as well, mind, which will give you a small discount if buying it all together. So So it's absolutely worth checking out their options on their website. But what I actually like about this whole kind of pricing system is it's very modular. Altogether, it feels like a bit of a mouthful to say that your smart lock is going to cost you over £200, but the beauty is that you don't have to buy it all at once. Start with the Lock Pro on its own for around £120, £130 and add all the other bits at a later date when or even if you needed to. But as a device on its own, I wholly think that around £120, £130 is absolutely incredible value for the sheer number of innovations and problems it solves that many other smart locks don't. It seems to address almost every concern that I have about having a smart lock, and the fact that it has an ultimate failsafe of an analog unlocking option is great if you have the right type of cylinder with the emergency function. It just makes this such a worthy product for my smart home moving forward. Switchbot continue to bring out products that innovate in a way that no other brand is doing, and it's evident that someone at the team has sat in a very dark room for hours upon end trying to come up with solutions to problems that we've all become complacent with, thinking that's just the way it is. I say this having recently reviewed the K10 robot vacuum cleaner, a super small robot vacuum with innovations that other brands just don't have. And if the K10 and Lock Pro aren't enough innovation, I'm in the process of reviewing their S10 robot cleaner, which I'm not joking when I say that could possibly be decades ahead of competitors. But as for the Switchbot Lock Pro, it just oozes with innovation, and although it's still not 100% perfect, nothing is, I think this is an excellent product indeed and a fantastic choice for a smart lock. Let me know what you think of the Lock Pro. Does the additional failsafes and the flexibility tempt you to finally change to a smart lock or not? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you all back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.